What's going on, Packers fans? Happy Tuesday. Welcome into an all-new episode of the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. It is Tuesday, which means we are being joined by the wonderful Justis Mosqueda. You can find him on acmepackingcompany.com and, of course, at JUMOSQ on social media. Justis, wonderful to be chatting with you. How the heck are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. I actually should pull this thing up because I found a new meaning in life, Andy. This doesn't happen often, but
not NCAA basketball related, not Oregon related.
No. All right, I gotta show you Chrome tab.
Did you find the Rice Krispie treats with the ice cream sandwiches, the Rice Krispie treat ice cream sandwiches?
No, can I share my screen right now? Am I doing it?
You got it. You're in.
You see it?
I see it.
This strap thing. I did not think that this was going to be life-changing. I had to help one of my friends move. We did, I think it was like 10,000 steps, but most of it was carrying hardwood. I used these straps. I laughed at the beginning. Andy, I woke up the next morning totally fine. No
game
hurting,
changer.
No aching, nothing. I bought these things the very next morning. You can go on my Twitter mentions and see all this stuff. Everyone is like, yeah, I laughed too. And then I was like, yep, need those forever. So this is my PSA. Go buy those damn straps. It's like $15. Dude, it's off of one move. You're going to feel so much better. And I assume if you're watching football content, you're probably the type of guy who gets asked to help move when your friends move. So you're probably doing this, I don't know, maybe twice a year. Worth it. Go do it. Save your back. They're not paying me. I don't know what company sells this. I'm just trying to put you guys on game. This is important. I'm saving American backs here.
Unrelated, today's show is brought to you by, but I don't even know who makes them, so I couldn't even make like a funny joke about it. But yeah, I've heard it. I'm way too lazy to do any sort of heavy lifting on my own. But yeah, like I've heard they're an absolute game changer. So like I've seen people like come and like deliver stuff like when we've had something huge delivered and they've got them and it's just is like moving with them. And I'm like, what kind of black magic is this? And apparently it is.
I hit up my father-in-law. I was like, have you seen these before? Because I used to work at a rental center at a high school where, the second half, I was just pressure washing crap off of like literal crap off of farm equipment and stuff. But the first half was pretty fun when we were just like setting up weddings, things of that nature. We never had any of these straps. We had dollies and stuff like that, which was nice. But for some of like those awkward things, like it really proves the rule on like that thing's not heavy. It's just like awkwardly shaped. Those straps save so much. And I'm so happy that I got them.
Moving's the worst. So yeah, anything that you can do to make your life any easier during that entire process is by far and away worth it. So yeah, if I ever have to get in, or I'm sure I'll be in that situation again. I've got two boys, I've got two kids, so it's gonna definitely happen. I will remember to definitely do that because yeah, I'm all for less work. Work smarter, not harder, as always. We've got a variety of different Packers stuff to discuss, as well as other moving techniques that we'll maybe get to through the course of today's show. I want to start with Demovsky's article. It was sort of like a passing moment. Like this is why, by the way, like with Wilde and Huber and Demovsky and like all these guys, like always read all of the articles because you never know when they're gonna like. It might be something like totally mundane of like Packers, season tickets go up $5, and then you scroll down 3 lines. It's like, also the Packers are interested in cutting so and so. You're like, wait, what? Where did this come from? So always read all of their stuff because you never quite know. But Demovsky had in there basically that they're still planning on trading / eventually maybe even releasing Jaire Alexander. That there's no thoughts of going to him with any sort of reduced sort of rate. I talked to Demovsky last week on the radio show. Very similar conversation of that in fact. Jaire's camp is surprised that something hasn't happened already, either via trade or release. So thoughts on just kind of the article and where we're at with the Jaire situation?
To me, not surprising. Whenever things go public, it's because like in terms of not trade requests, but like, hey, you guys can call on this guy. It's because the initial calls haven't been what they wanted, right? Think about the DK Metcalf stuff where they're like, teams want him. It might cost a first and a third, and then the price drops quickly after stuff goes public. I think Trey Hendrickson is probably in a similar boat. I don't know if he's going to end up getting moved. But I think this came out after we had our chit chat last week, and I told you off air, I was like, they're asking for a 1, and then that news broke. I think the next day. I think that price is going to come down. I don't know if anyone wants to pay that much money for Trey Hendrickson, but this is all to say, like, whatever they thought that they were going to get from Jaire certainly hasn't been sufficient at this point. So what can change, right? What changes? There's a couple deadlines, right? Everyone loves to talk about deadlines with these type of things. One is the draft. There are teams that are going to go into the draft thinking that, hey, we're going to, maybe we struck out on Paulson Adebo and stuff like that. And we're hoping to get a cornerback in the draft. And some of these teams almost certainly won't be able to get away with one of them, right?
Yep.
There's going to be injuries early on in camp. June 1st is a pretty big deal as far as trades go, right? You can release a guy with a post-June 1 designation. You can't trade a guy with a post-June 1 designation. You either trade him before June 1 or after, right? It's kind of a binary type of thing that you're working with. I guess you could agree to it beforehand and then not process it until the end.
Trade cap, or you can't do draft capital ahead of time. So if you wanted,
right, exactly.
Not that you could do it after June 1st either, but if you're hoping for draft capital this year, then you have to do it before June 1st, of course.
Yeah.
You don't end up with the NBA trades where you acquire somebody's rights and then trade them afterward. Thank God, by the way. NBA. This is my NBA. Fix it. That's my PSA for the day. Fix it so that you don't have to have these stupid situations where somebody's going up to the podium and putting on the hats thing. And then it's like, everyone knows exactly where they're going. Like, we don't need a charade. It's so stupid, but I digress.
The Kobe and the Charlotte Hornets is the one I always think of. I'm like, that never happened. That was never for real. So some of the other details are interesting, right? The fact that Jaire's camp would turn it down, the fact that the Packers haven't offered one, which was the original reporting, right? The original reporting before free agency was that they had not offered him a salary cut. Whether or not he can get that, I don't think he could get whatever it is, $17.5 million on a 1-year deal this year. So it sounds like he just doesn't want to be a Packer. Is really what it boils down to, and the Packers have been made aware.
I want to pause you there. So, do you think it's that he doesn't want to be a Packer, or that the Packers don't want him to be a Packer, or both?
I don't know.
Because see, I lean the latter. I lean towards I don't think the Packers want him to be a Packer.
Well, I guess it could be a both. Well, if they know, I guess we don't know that data point, right? Because we don't know if they would offer a restructure, what his number would be. Yeah, I mean, it's a tough situation. I mean, basically what's happening, right? I mean, they're just squatting on him as an asset that they hope appreciates at some point.
Correct.
Either when a team gets spooked by injury going into the draft, post-draft, any of those things. I think it's going to be really interesting to see if he shows up for the first phase of OTAs, which are going to start in a month. I know that hasn't necessarily been announced yet, but they usually start about 2 weeks before the draft. He has, I think, something like $700,000 on the line in terms of bonuses. You would think that if you're going to take a pay cut, which you probably are, if you're Jaire and you get released, you probably want to recoup some of that money. I know he hasn't shown up in previous seasons. I know people have brought that up and they're like, well, why would he show up now and be a disruption and all this to do exactly that, to spur potentially some movement, also to make some money, because you're not going to have the stuff banked that you had in previous seasons. So could get messy down the stretch. It's really all kind of for show. Like, until they pull the trigger on something, I don't think any of it matters. I don't think he's going to ruin a locker room, right? I mean, he reached out to Hobbs. Hobbs mentioned that, and he was like, he congratulated me on signing and all that stuff. I don't think Jaire is a bad guy. I don't think he's a guy that you don't want around.
Are we in complicated fella stage with Jaire Alexander? Is he a complicated fella? We're on the complicated fella meter? Are we at with Jaire?
I think he's a complicated. I mean, he definitely like marches to the beat of his own drum a little bit, right? Again, I don't think he's a bad dude.
I totally agree.
This, again, I think most of this has to do with his health than
Totally
any
agree.
personality stuff. But yeah, I mean, it definitely does have to be frustrating if you're in Jaire's camp and you're like, there's no roster bonus that was triggered in his deal, and therefore the Packers can just sit on his deal, and all of this money is getting sucked out of free agency right now. So whenever he ends up going to market, it's not going to be as good as if it was, a week ago or whatever, 2 weeks ago. I can't even. The off season's crazy. All the days blend in, so I don't even remember when free agency started. So yeah, I mean, I understand that it'd be frustrating. This is also a point that I think we talked about this last week, the Packers contract structure, where they don't really have these roster bonuses several seasons into it. They're only guaranteeing 1 year. They're holding a guy on a 4-year contract, all that stuff. If the Packers were to have signed a 3-year contract with rolling roster bonuses and a minimum salary, we wouldn't have been in this position where we could have sat on Jaire's deal and kind of, I want to say held him for ransom, but at least squatted on him as an asset, right? All this stuff, action would have been spurred around, third day of the new league year or fifth day of the new league year, or however they wanted to write it. So kudos to Russ Ball and Goody on that, I guess.
Raise the banner.
Yeah, we'll see if it ends up netting the Packers anything in terms of assets.
There's so many different ways that I want to go on this. I think the main way that I want to go is I see a lot. I see it on my social media. I see it in the comments every once in a while that if Green Bay releases Jaire Alexander, or if they get some sort of 6th, 7th round pick in return, that they're complete idiots for doing this. It's a $17 million deal. He's, when healthy, one of the top corners in the game. And he's arguably the best player out there that Green Bay still could have on their team this year. There's just nothing left in free agency. Jaire is on the team already. Why release him for nothing? Why trade him for a 6th or 7th round pick? Why not just keep him? That's what I see a ton of. I have my own way of going about it, explaining this, but what would your response be to people of like, this is just the dumbest thing. Why would you ever get rid of him?
I definitely would have tried to work something out with Jaire. Now, the actions that the Packers have taken, especially with all this reporting that has happened recently, where they're like, they haven't extended him a pay cut offer. They don't think that he's going to take the pay cut. All that. I mean, the I don't want to say blow up, but at least newsworthy clip of him on Locker Clear Out Day, where he was like, I don't even know if I'm going to be here next year. Why do you guys even want to talk to me? Keyshawn Nixon talking about himself being CB1. Them signing Hobbs. Certainly seems like the team is planning on going into the season with Nixon and Hobbs as their starting outside corners. I don't know if people are ready to hear that. But I guess that would be my counterpoint is you paid Hobbs all this money. And again, I don't know if Hobbs is even CB1. I think he's probably going to start off as CB2 behind Keyshawn. I know I got my little name thing right here with Keyshawn #1 truther underneath my face right now.
Is there a difference even between CB1 and CB2 anymore? They're both in the field at all times. They don't.
Yeah, not the way the Packers do it. I mean, it's going to be left cornerback and right cornerback. I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. They're not going to travel. They clearly want Bullard in the slot. So I don't think it's that big of a deal. But Packers fans need to get it in their head. Hobbs didn't come in here to replace Nixon. I think that's something that has to be realized. I mean, whether the Packers take a corner top 100 or not, I don't know if that guy's
Valentine
into the starting lineup immediately. Yeah,
that's Valentine competition and future competition to me. Yeah,
yeah.
Because I see Jaire being gone. I don't think there's any question in that at this point. I see it as Hobbs and Nixon on the outside in base, Hobbs, Nixon, and Bullard in nickel versus 12 personnel and more obvious rundowns. And then probably, but still up for debate, I think Hobbs in the slot, Nixon on the outside, and then either Valentine and or early pick competing on more obvious passing downs.
Yeah. And I think it's funny because I think the person most likely to lose his job would be Bullard. At a kind of like the starting 5, right? I mean, we talked about when Hobbs signed initially, I was like, holy crap, we reset the nickel market. And then because Jordan Lewis had just gotten 10, right? So it wouldn't have been that crazy to think that Hobbs is 12 had kind of reset it, right?
Yep.
But then, all the reporting since then has said, hey, they're looking at Hobbs as an outside cornerback. And I was like, okay, it's interesting because, there were a couple times, especially toward the end of the year, right? The second Lions game where people have been asking, hey, let's play man, let's play man, let's play man. Stop giving up these soft zones, right? They had just come off of that Miami game where the second half, it looked like Tua couldn't miss. He was just thrown right over the linebackers, right? So Packers switched to man coverage. It wasn't any of the corners getting dusted. It wasn't the safeties getting dusted. It was people, putting Amon-Ra St. Brown in the slot and just say, hey, you run away from Bullard. So I think Bullard is probably the player who's most at risk right now. But I also understand why the team doesn't just want to take an L on a guy who was a rookie, played multiple positions, second-round pick last year, and they probably, maybe have him compete or something like that, but definitely don't have him be a second option at this point, right? So
no,
I'm sure they're gonna move guys around in the secondary, but ultimately I think they're gonna settle on, Williams and McKinney up top, Keyshawn and Hobbs outside with Bullard in the slot.
Yeah, I think so too, with some versatility as well. And we'll see what they do in the draft from a corner standpoint, and if there's any competition there with Valentine and any opportunity to maybe kick Hobbs inside a little bit. So excited to see that, but I'm with you. I don't see Jaire on the team any longer, but until things are finalized, you never quite know, and you never say never, but I would be pretty surprised. I want to go through some of these positions that I know we've talked about before, but this is another question that I get a lot on social media. I get it on the radio right now. I get it on pretty much everywhere of, is this just it? Like is free agency done for Green Bay? And I kind of go back to people and I'm like, there's nothing left. Like it's over. It's done with. Yes, Trey Hendrickson's still out there, but for the most part, free agency is kind of done. We'll go through the top 25 remaining free agents from Greg Rosenthal in just a moment to see if you have any interest in any of these players. But I want to go through wide receiver and defensive end first, because I know you've been looking at some metrics in pretty granular detail on these. So we'll start with wide receiver. Green Bay did not get Cooper Kupp. I was very much in the thank you for that sort of category at 3 years, 45. I'm not sure how you felt, but are there any wide receivers left that piqued your interest, and how would you have felt at Cooper Kupp at 345?
Kupp, definitely no. 345 was crazy to me. He clearly took a step back last season. I don't think he was really the type of receiver that the Packers needed either. I think maybe if you had traded away like Romeo or something like that, maybe the offense had room for a Kupp. But to pay a guy $15 million a year with Reed and Dobbs already on the team, I think this team needs speed more than anything else. These are guys off of ESPN's open rating, which I actually think is actually a pretty good stat. So this is player tracking data. I don't like how ESPN's advanced analytics values receiver in general, but the open stat is something that I think is a little bit illuminating. It measures a little bit of different stuff than like what PFF does. For example, right? Like PFF is only going to grade wide receivers and defensive backs when they're targeted. That doesn't tell me the whole picture. Open tells me how much separation a guy is going to be able to create, right? So when you look at that and it's on a 0 to 100 scale, right? Cooper Kupp was a 37, which I believe is the worst of any signed other than Mike Williams, who was at 29. So no, not super bummed that we missed out on Kupp. I think his prime is behind him, as much as he'll say, the best is ahead of me. Amari Cooper is another guy who's under 40 in that stat. He's a guy who a couple of seasons ago, I would have been like, yeah, let's go do it. This year, not so much. The only major free agent up at the top. So I'm looking at guys who are ranked above 70. Again, this is on a scale of 0 to 100 who hit free agency and played a significant amount of snaps. One was Devontae Adams. He didn't come here, right? The other guy available is Stephon Diggs, who just had a major ACL surgery, and who knows if he's going to be available in week 1. So I'm not surprised that Diggs is out there on the market right now. The wide receiver market, I never felt like really meshed with what the Packers needed. That's why I was like, the MVS ripcord is sitting back there. But then once guys like Josh Palmer signed a pretty significant contract with the Bills, once he signed, I was like, all right, maybe these, bigger, faster guys are going to sign for a little bit more than we expected if they're at a decent age. Again, I mean, people make MVS like butts of jokes and stuff like that. And they're like, this guy drops everything, all this stuff. Dude, it's a lot harder to find that body than you give it credit for.
Big time.
That guy has value in the NFL, and that's why he keeps bouncing around between teams, because even if they don't want to make him the number one starter, they can have him line up as an outside receiver as that, third or fourth pass catching option, and he can bring real value to what, the spacing of the offense, right? He's going to make people around him better in a way that isn't really going to be measured well, unless you're looking at like this open stuff, or like how many deep routes is he running, and what does that do with the offense when he's on the field versus when he's off, stuff like that.
It's the 3-point shooter in basketball. You continue to see, like, even if they are not like the defender that you want, like 3-point shooters continue to get jobs in the NBA no matter what, because you need the spacing. You have to have the spacing or everything gets clogged and you can't do anything. And it's the same thing in football. You need the field stretcher. Otherwise, everything gets clogged underneath and it makes everything extremely difficult. Yeah. There's no run after the catch area. And just the threat of being able to space it and every once in a while being able to hit on some of those is so insanely valuable. So yeah, MVS by far and away has his flaws and is not like the ideal version of this, but it's why he's probably going to have 2 or 3 more years in the league. And because you cannot find these guys, at least enough of them, and teams can't get enough because of how valuable they are.
Yeah, so as far as the wide receiver market, I mean, I was the two, I guess 3 guys, right? I mean, if we're going to count MVS, like the 3 guys who always made the most sense to me, Devontae, because he can beat man coverage even if it isn't deep, right? There are ways I've seen him do it, and I still think that he's, if not a top 10 wide receiver, he's around that range, right?
Yep.
Nuke is a guy who I think is kind of taken a step back in his career. I think Devontae has probably got 2 more really good years in him at minimum, just off of how he played last season. I know everyone wants to go Jets, LOL, that he could still play. That he was not the core issue that the New York Jets were facing.
Not even close.
DK, I understand passing on DK, considering how much he got and the fact that you had to pay a 2nd round pick. I was hoping a 3rd could get it done. And if the Packers didn't trade a 3rd for it, I'd be pretty pissed off, probably still to this day. And then the MVS one. But outside of that, I mean, I just don't think that there were that many options that made sense at the wide receiver position. I understand giving yourself a chance in the draft and kind of looking there to sort of backfill. Because, I mean, I don't know if you've seen these contracts. T. Higgins just got, $28 million to be a wide receiver too? I was told we have a roster full of wide receiver 2s, and all their contracts are about to come up. So I understand they're not T. Higgins. Romeo Doubs is going to be asking for a 8-figure contract, right? Maybe per year, right? Christian Watson, even off of injury, is going to be looking for something like that. Jaden Reed is sure as hell going to get that, right? So it might be time to backfill and kind of sort of think about contingency plans at the position.
Yeah, I think so too. There's nothing left out there in my opinion. Maybe you can find a creative trade somewhere. I don't know how. Teams aren't exactly giving up these field stretchers either. The only one that I could think of that might be available, which is not Green Bay's type at all, but at least might have the ability, Jalen Hyatt from the Giants. He's 120 pounds. So that's going to be, and he doesn't run block. He's got juice, but yeah, it's not going to be a fit in Green Bay. So
I thought you were Jalen Waddle. I thought you were going to say Jalen Waddle. I was like, I don't know what that contract looks like. I don't know if Miami wants off of that. Probably doubt it.
Justis, I'm a Packer fan. I don't go to the top of the market for looking at trades for Green Bay. I'm looking at what team is ready to give up on somebody that Green Bay can ship a 6th or 7th round pick somewhere. That's the market that I'm looking at. So no Jalen Waddle, Jalen Hyatt would be the only one. Like that's the level of player. And again, he's not going to move the needle at all.
No. again, he's not going to move the needle. So I'd rather just have a draft pick, give myself a chance there.
Totally agreed. Let's go defensive end. I know you looked at some of these. I know there's a name out there, Justis. You've been toying with just a little bit. Actually, there's two. I should say that there's two names out there that you've been toying with a little bit. They didn't get Dante Fowler. That's another one I was not super upset by. But and then Azeez Ojulari got signed before recording this today. Not a ton left on the defensive end market either.
Yeah. So when I looked at the numbers from a pass rushing perspective, right? There were basically, if I'm counting this right, 22 guys in this edge class who over the last 2 years have rushed the passer as much as LVN, right? So consider them at least borderline starters, right? Who are available in free agency. Lucas Van Ness would have ranked 14th among those. So you're cutting about half of them are below the Lucas Van Ness line in terms of pressure rate. Once Dante Fowler went, there were two names available who were played at least as many snaps as LVN and had a better pressure rate, right? So that's kind of what we're looking for, is a guy who can play more snaps than LVN and has a better pressure rate. They are Von Miller, who hasn't started a game in 2 years because he is now a full-time designated pass rusher, and Zadarius Smith, who is still hanging out there. I'm actually pretty surprised Zadarius Smith's still out there. I joke about bringing back Zadarius Smith. He would make so much sense on this team if not for any of the history that the two sides had. But unfortunately, that history does exist. I will say, by far the most interesting asset, I guess, is the way you think of it, if you want to talk about it like in NBA terms, is Bryce Huff in the NFL. Bryce Huff signed a contract that looks horrendous in retrospect. In the playoffs, not only was he not active for the Super Bowl, he basically only played 2-minute drills for the Philadelphia Eagles prior to that. To put it real simply, he was a designated pass rusher for the Jets. The Eagles signed him to a major deal thinking that he could have potentially been an every down player for Vic Fangio's defense. Fangio does not seem to be in line with that type of thinking.
No.
Huff's contract guaranteed him, I believe, a $15 million bonus at the start of the new league year. The Eagles sincerely might take a $28 million cap hit to get off of Huff. And this is pre-June 1, right? So, post June 1, maybe it looks a little bit different the way that they could split it over 2 years. But that money is coming due at some point. They sincerely might have to take $28 million in cap debt over at least 2 seasons to get off of this contract, simply because they don't want to play him. Huff is still a good player as a designated pass rusher. You just have to do him. You have to play him like that. And that's what the Jets did in a similar system to what Halfley runs, all right? With Robert Saleh. But Fangio doesn't seem to want to do it. So this is going to get really interesting. That money is due by the first week. So the Eagles, between now and then, can pay that money, that $15 million bonus, whenever they want, right? It just has to be, it's guaranteed, and it has to happen before the start of week 1. Once they pay that bonus, he's got a salary of less than $2 million for this upcoming season, and there's no guarantees further down the line. So you could buy a rental for $2 million and get who at least, he's not a top 30 defensive end, but he's a top 15 designated pass rusher, and you can get him on the cheap. I don't know what the market value for that is going to look like. Maybe Howie tries to save face. I mean, maybe that's the Jaire trade, right? I don't know how I don't know how Jaire fits into that cornerback room. I mean, I guess DeJean is in the slot, right? So
they lose Darius Slay.
Mm-hmm.
So then obviously they've got Quinyon Mitchell. And then I know they cut Bradbury. He was kind of moonlighting as a safety.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Bradbury thing is what you worry about with Huff. where they're like, yeah, that's a bad contract. They'll just sit on it because if they've already paid it, they're just gonna squat on it and not gonna help anyone else get better. But yeah, I mean,
Keely
maybe
Ringo, they got Keely Ringo, and then they signed Adoree Jackson as well. Eli Ricks is nothing. So yeah, it's basically Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean in the slot, and then their other options on the outside are Keely Ringo and Adoree Jackson, who they just signed. I don't think there's been terms on the Adoree Jackson contract yet. I don't know if that's like
I don't think it's going to be very much.
3 million, 4 million, maybe at most. Yeah, it's not out there yet.
And I don't know if they really want to start Keely Ringo either. To be totally
He's a Georgia guy, so he does have that going for him in Philly. Although they had no interest in Eric Stokes of all the like thousands of Georgia guys. No interest in the.
Did you see the contract?
Less than 4, right? 3 something.
Yep, but it was like 3 guaranteed.
Yeah, it's a legit contract. Yeah.
Yeah.
Double Josh Myers. You're starting a franchise today. You can have Josh Myers at 1 year 2 or Eric Stokes at 1 year 4. What are you doing?
I'd probably take the Myers.
Same.
Yeah. I mean,
you need 10 offensive linemen anyway. He can be one of the 10.
Yeah. I think the injury was pretty unfortunate for Myers. I don't know if that would have played out the same way if he were fully healthy and didn't have that hairline fracture. But yeah, I mean, maybe that's the Jaire trade, right? Where you're flipping Jaire for Huff so that Howie can at least hold something up and be like, hey, I didn't take a complete bath on this trade, right? Like, or on this signing. I didn't make the worst decision in the world.
I can't imagine Philly eating that much salary cap and then taking on 17 and a half of Jaire, though. Maybe I'm wrong, but
I mean, if they post June 1, I mean, maybe Jaire is willing to renegotiate the contract with them and not us, right? I mean, who knows how this thing happens, but Howie's down for some weird stuff, man. And he's got a really, really weird deal that he's going to be in control of pretty soon. That is like, it's going to be the biggest dead cap in the history of the NFL for a non-quarterback. But it's going to have value for another team because of how much just dead money that they're taking on because of the contract structure. It's a really weird deal. Super weird deal.
The interesting thing here too is they're the ones that signed Ojulari. They already signed Josh Uche.
They've signed like They've signed 3 defensive ends in free agency, and that's not including bringing back Nolan Smith. From Georgia. So, like, they're clearly doing something at defensive. They're not going to hold on to Huff.
Yeah, there's a very good possibility. He'd be an interesting
15 one. Designated pass rusher.
Did you see Nagler's tweet about this? And I loved it so much because he was talking about the like, hey, the Packer, like Goody's talking about like, hey, we're not going to do the thing where we've got like a designated pass rusher. We want everyone to do everything. And Nagler's like, that's great. You also rostered Jonathan Garvin for 3 seasons or whatever it was. And he couldn't do anything. He couldn't stop the run or rush the passer. Like one of those spots can clearly be for a designated pass rusher.
Did Ford ever make the 53? I can't remember.
No, he made 3 consecutive practice squads. Actually, I take it back. In year 2, he made the 53 on cut down day, and then they released him midweek before week 1. And then brought him back to the practice squad after that. Yeah. So no, I don't think he ever played a snap in Green Bay, and then Chicago picked him up midway off the practice squad last year. So
yeah, I mean, they've squatted on some guys before. I need a pass rusher, man. For the love of God, I need a pass rusher. Defensive end is the one that I'm a little bit worried about. Defensive tackle, there's so many guys in the draft. The Packers are going to take one in the top
I understand
100.
the overall philosophy of like, hey, when you get injuries, like everyone's got to be able to play, yada, yada, yada. Dude, you kept 6 defensive ends this past year. You kept Brenton Cox, Aaron Mosby, Preston Smith, Rashawn Gary, LVN, and Kingsley Enagbare. I promise you one of those can be a designated pass rusher. Not to mention you can call up one of your 18 players plus a international pathway program player from 16 plus 1 from the practice squad anytime you need. If you need a run stopping defensive end to platoon with that guy, that is not a problem. That there are plenty of those available if you need them. Like you can have one of your 53 man rosteries be designated as a pass rusher, and I promise you it is going to be okay.
Yep. Especially if the guys cost less than $2 million a year. Right.
All right. So there's no wide receivers. There's maybe a Bryce Huff via trade in Philly.
Maybe a Von Miller too. I don't
maybe a Von Miller.
know what the heck is going to happen there, but Maybe
Is there anyone else at any other position that you look at in free agency and are like, that's the guy, that's the value free agent signing, or just any free agent signing that I'd still be interested in?
I mean, there's a lot of offensive linemen, honestly.
Tevin Jenkins. I don't know if you interested.
Well, like I'm looking at names, right? Like, okay, so let's look at tackle first of all. Tyron Smith is still out there. He can at least pass block. That's pretty much the only guy I'm interested in there. Tevin Jenkins, Brandon Scherf, Matt Pryor, Connor McGovern, who can play inside and at guard and at center.
Yep.
Dalton Reisner. Yeah, I mean, there's interior offensive linemen out there that I think makes sense. I don't know if they'd pull the trigger. I mean, we're already looking at a spot where potentially Sean Ryan or Thornton Morgan would be coming off of the bench at this point. Maybe if one of these guys makes it to, around the spring owners meetings, when the Packers sign like Andre Dillard and stuff like that, maybe they end up taking a swing at one of these guys. But I don't expect them to spend a lot of money on another offensive lineman.
What about Jedrick Wills or Dylan Radune's former first or second round pick as that Andre Dillard type reclamation project?
Maybe. They haven't been nearly as consistent as some of the other guys that I listed.
No, for sure. This is like your 9th or 10th guy, right? Like this is just
right.
Like a 1 year, $2 million Josh Myers-ish type signing of like, hey, this guy was a former top, either first or second round pick, and it didn't work out elsewhere. Can we bring him in and see if we can remake their career somehow?
Yeah, I really liked Wills coming out.
Same.
He did not have a great start to his NFL career. I mean, I guess I could say this is probably the same thing about Dillard, honestly. So yeah, I mean, maybe if he's going to come in for cheap and just basically be Travis Glover insurance, right? So
everyone needs a little Travis Glover insurance in their life. You can never have enough Travis Glover insurance. If there's anything in life I've learned, it's that. Let me go through the top 25 remaining free agents, and you can just do lightning. And if there's anyone that's a yes, we'll maybe stop and talk about them a little bit. Number 11 was on their overall list, and again, number 1 on their remaining list, Amari Cooper.
No, washed.
21, Asante Samuel.
Not anymore, but there is background with our pass game coordinator, Ansley.
And they brought him in on a pre-draft visit.
Right. So maybe not absolute no, but he's also coming off of like a stinger that cost him an entire season. So I don't know what his medicals are like.
He's the one where, like, if the cost starts dropping enough, I'm just like, all right, just do it at this point. Like, it's 25 years old. He's talented. He doesn't tackle super well, but like just play him on obvious pass downs. Not that tackling isn't, still worthwhile then, but I think you could maybe find a role. I don't think it happens, but the longer it goes on, the cheaper maybe he gets, the more I'd maybe be interested. I'm assuming Aaron Rodgers is a no. Cam Robinson.
No, been overrated his whole career. I'm not surprised he's still on the market.
Totally agreed. Stephon Diggs.
I just don't think he's going to sign until he can get cleared medically at this point. Totally. Why would he? Like, if you can sign with the Kansas City Chiefs in September, why wouldn't you just do that? So,
yep. No, that makes all the sense. Tevin Jenkins.
I don't think they're going to give him money. I guess like if the price drops and they're cool with the medical and they're just like, yeah, you're going to be a super sub.
Jenkins is going to want to at least go somewhere where we can at minimum compete to be a starter.
Right.
I would think. Yeah, so I just don't see that being a fit. Calais Campbell, 39-year-old Calais Campbell.
No, he's already on a pitch count. He wanted to play defensive end. He needs to be banging heads on the inside. Like, he'll help you on special teams on like field goal block and stuff. But outside of that, I'm not. No, especially with how deep this defensive tackle class is.
Assuming Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson are no, so I'll skip to Charles Omenihu.
No, I mean, he's an okay pass rusher. He hasn't played nearly as much as people think.
No, he's barely played. Yeah.
Yeah. Some of that is because of injury.
Suspension.
Again, maybe that's one of those like near the spring meetings type of deals, but I doubt they'll be announcing that anytime soon.
J.K. Dobbins.
No, I don't think we need it back.
Totally agreed. Zadarius Smith.
Me? I'd do it. I don't got to deal with him every day though. So I don't know how Matt feels.
I'm wondering how many like chances he's running out of. He's got to go to the Bears to complete the NFC North. All 4 teams to complete the collection, I guess, because he hit Minnesota, hit Green Bay, hit Detroit. He's got to go to Chicago, I think. Justin Simmons, safety. I can't imagine you have any interest there. Stephon Gilmore, 34 years old.
Not at this point. I think they have their corners, honestly. Unless you want to, yeah. I think they're more likely to take a swing on a guy like Asante Samuel Jr. than Stephon Gilmore.
Totally agreed. Kazir White, linebacker.
I think they got their 3 starting backers at least.
This is your opportunity to bash Tyron Hopper. I'm just giving you the opportunity if you want to bring it up.
He's not good. He's not good at football. He was never good at football.
Rasul Douglas.
No, washed.
Elijah Moore, 25 years old, wide receiver. Everyone wanted him in the 2nd round in 2021.
No, dude, you can like. Did you see what Jerry Jeudy did immediately, just stepping into that vacancy?
Yeah.
Elijah Moore can't play.
Yeah. Brandon Scherf.
Maybe. Sure. Again, I think he's a guy who probably wants to start.
Have at least an opportunity, yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't hate it for sure. So, like, I don't know. I mean, knock on wood, someone gets hurt in like early camp or something like that. Colin Scherf, like that makes sense to me.
Keenan Allen?
No, washed.
Julian Blackmon?
Washed and bad body at this point.
Yeah, Julian Blackmon, safety?
Nah, we don't.
No need.
Again, we're so
Tyron
good at
Smith, you mentioned, potential veteran swing tackle, but
I mean, if we trade Rashid,
it's not happening.
If we trade Rashid for like a 3rd or something, I don't know.
Don't see it happening. Mike Hilton?
No. What do we think of Bullard? No, I think you give Bullard a chance.
I think so too. Especially when you now have Hobbs too, if things break that way, and then you need to go with Valentine and maybe like who knows? But I don't think so either. Jedrick Wills we talked about, and then Nick Chubb. I don't think there's any need for Nick Chubb. So that's your 25 best remaining free agents, and not a whole lot to write home about, Justice.
No. Free agency was light this year, man. Cap keeps going up. People are retaining their own guys.
And it ended in basically the first 24 hours is also noteworthy. There was nothing left after that for the most part. Just really quick, some lightning round things here. Thoughts on losing AJ Dillon, Josh Myers, Eric Stokes, Corey Ballantyne, Eric Wilson? Any of those that you're losing any sleep over?
All those were expected. When McDuffie re-signed,
Slayton too. Sorry. Yeah.
All of those were expected. Not shocked about Slayton going to Cincinnati, considering the defensive line coach connection stuff there. McDuffie, when he re-signed, I thought that was the end of Eric Wilson because they're going to give a chance to Tyron Hopper at some point. Still think Wilson's a pretty solid football player. Definitely needs to be in a pretty defined role. We might get worse at linebacker depth by him walking away. But I also understand trying to give your 3rd round pick a chance, even if I graded that guy as like an undraftable player. Ballantyne, I think I would have hung on to him, considering the Packers cornerback depth, knowing that Jaire is going to be out. In 2023, he didn't get exposed at outside corner the way that most backups do. And Ballantyne was a pretty good special teamer. So that's the one that like I probably would have done. I don't know what the contract looks like. I assume it's very low.
Yeah, we haven't seen anything yet.
I'm assuming that it's, if it's not league minimum, it's pretty close to league minimum plus a small signing bonus. I maybe would have done that.
Corey Ballantyne last year got more than Josh Myers this year.
Is that true?
Yeah, Ballantyne was just a little bit over 2 million last year, and Myers is 2 million this year.
Well, he's playing the best football of his career, man. I don't know what to tell you.
Don't get me started. Do not get me started. I didn't tell you this, but I talked about this in my pod. It got to the point where I did my own, I had to have my own self-discovery because I had Josh Myers. I go through, obviously, and grade every single player on every single play. I had Myers graded very poorly again the year that they were talking about best football of his career, which was primarily in 2023. And I did a soul search of what the hell am I missing? Because like Goody said it, Steno said it, LaFleur said it, and I'm like, all right, clearly so I went back and I rewatched every single snap of Josh Myers, thinking that I was just an idiot, and like, all right, clearly I'm just missing something here. So I went back and rewatched anything, and after I did my extensive study, I came to the conclusion that I was not missing anything. And apparently I was not super wrong.
Yeah. Don't trust coaches when they're on hot mics. Sometimes they don't tell the full truth. Whatever.
Part of the job description is lying.
What are they going to do? Rip Josh Myers and he's still starting?
They should have. It couldn't have gone worse. I mean, if I'm Josh Myers, I keep hearing, "Oh, I'm doing great, best football of my career." All right, I'm good. I don't need to do anything else. I'm set for life.
I think they really liked the human.
Yes,
and I think
by all accounts, awesome. Yeah,
and I think that they really liked that he handled protections so that Jordan didn't have to do that.
Big time.
Elton, and they dealt with the player because of that.
Yeah, no, I'm with
also,
you. I think
drafted in the second round, so
that also helps too. No, Ballantyne would have been one that I would have considered as well. I'm interested to see what that contract looks like. Dylan, for Dylan's sake, he needed to go somewhere else. There was no spot for him. Myers, I probably would have taken back at 1 year too if he was fine being a backup, but I'm totally cool with moving on as well. Stokes, it was time. Wilson, it made sense given that they gave McDuffie the contract.
I don't know what that does to your locker room if you bring Myers back and you're like, okay, you're going to be a backup. That's another thing that I forgot to mention, kind of comes into play with the Jaire thing, right? Where, all right, you don't want to deal with the pay cut? We will sit through this thing and drag through this thing, and all the salary cap money will evaporate before we release you to the open market, right? What does that do in terms of trying to get guys in line? I guess is probably the best way to put it from a locker room standpoint. I don't think that could be understated in that conversation. I kind of forgot about that.
Yeah, those things they matter. They happen, and how those is not necessarily a negotiation, but the players can be willing to go to extreme lengths, and teams can too. It's just business at this point, and that it just kind of is what it is. All right, 4 players remaining for the Packers that are unrestricted free agents now. Rank them for a level that you would like to see them back in Green Bay. It's slim pickings, but Andre Dillard, John Fitzpatrick, right? John? Yeah, right. John Fitzpatrick, then Robert Rochelle, and then Davis, the tight end.
Tyler Davis probably needs to get into coaching already. The way that they talk about him, especially after injuries have kind of piled on the last 2 years. If the Packers wanted him back, he'd be back.
Because it's a vet minimum, no signing bonus signing. Yeah.
Right.
An easy one to negotiate.
Dillard kind of lost his spot down the stretch. So I don't think there's really any interest in kind of bringing him back. Rochelle, maybe. I definitely would have rather had Ballantyne than Rochelle.
The weird thing no, I guess not. Never mind. I was gonna say I thought Rochelle was older. He turns 27 in April. It's not like super old, but he's not like 25 either. So yeah.
Yeah, Fitzpatrick is the one that makes the most sense for sure. Blocking tight end. Packers kind of need a body there. Down the stretch of the season last year, he did a better job offensively and started taking away special team snaps from Ben Sims. So I'm actually kind of surprised he wasn't brought back. The Packers kind of did the same RFA to, UFA thing with Tyler Davis back in the day, right? Where Tyler Davis, they're like, we're not going to pay the tender, but we'll let the tender, we'll turn down the tender, let your contract expire. You go to undrafted free agency or unrestricted free agency, and then we'll bring you back on the vet minimum. I kind of thought that that's what was going to happen with Fitzpatrick, but hasn't happened yet. And it could have happened much quicker. So
thought it was going to.
Yeah. So I don't know. And that was a guy that they plucked off of a practice squad to their 53, right? So
yep.
You'd think that probably like the Falcons would have pounced on him if not, if Green Bay didn't put in an offer. I don't know why he's still hanging out there.
Yeah, I thought he would have a 1 year vet minimum by now, but no, we'll see. Maybe it gets done in the next couple of weeks or before the draft, or maybe after the draft if he's still out there and Green Bay doesn't get any sort of tight ends in day 3. A couple of really last quick ones. The hell are the Falcons doing with Kirk Cousins still?
Dude, I don't know. Have you looked at the Falcons front 7 too? Dude, it's bad. It's like
been bad. It's been bad since like the Packers beat him in the NFC Championship when John Abraham was out there freaking playing.
Dude, it's worse. It's like The only thing stopping from a guard climbing up to Divine Diablo playing inside backer is Rukaroro. It is not a good situation right now. It might be the worst front seven in football. They completely mismanaged. I mean, we talked about this, in prior podcasts where, you got to be realistic in terms of like what your timeline looks like. They mismanaged their timeline completely. They thought they had it figured out, and they really might be one of the worst teams in football this upcoming season.
That is a ugly front seven. Holy crap.
It's bad. And it's worse because David Onyemata, you think of David Onyemata when David Onyemata was half decent. David Onyemata is not that good anymore. And it's pretty amazing that they didn't release him when they released Grady Jarrett too, because Grady Jarrett's a better player. And that's their
ugly
good player on their line right now. It's not good.
They should sign Leonard Floyd too. What are we doing here, Atlanta? By the way, well, they've got at least Terrell and Jesse Bates in the secondary, but that is a defense of literally Jesse Bates, AJ Terrell, and that's it. I mean, Aurora, like you said, what's that?
It's bad, dude.
Yeah. Oof. Yeah. Good luck, Atlanta Falcons. You're gonna need it.
Terry might be one of the worst GMs in football. He might get canned after this season.
Yeah, he probably should, just looking at their roster right now. And then what is Minnesota going to do at quarterback? Is it just McCarthy? Are they going to get a vet backup? What are we doing here?
I don't know how sold Minnesota is on McCarthy. So we'll see what happens. I don't know if they're going to go the Aaron Rodgers route, but I don't know how sold they are on McCarthy.
So is it, did they go Flacco? Did Flacco sign somewhere? Did Flacco sign? I can't remember.
Flacco went on a visit with the Giants.
But didn't sign anywhere yet, right?
No, I don't believe so. Everyone is waiting on Rodgers.
Yeah, so Flacco's still out there. Jameis Winston's still out there. I can't imagine Winston in that offense, but maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, Russ?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. That's a weird, if they don't trust McCarthy, that's a weird situation to be in. I don't know if they can find another Sam Darnold somewhere, of like somebody that's sitting out there. I don't know. That's a really weird situation for them to be in. Who was there anyone that was supposed to be like a starter that like ended up, well, I guess, Bryce Young's no longer available. That would have been a really interesting way for them to go if he was like still out there, but
Zach Wilson signed in Miami,
Wilson would be interesting.
Very interesting he's down in Miami now, but that's very interesting. Right. I would keep an eye on that situation. They paid him a decent amount of money to be a backup. I don't think that means nothing.
Huh. Derek Carr.
Mid-season Tua trade to Minnesota.
Derek Carr go Spencer Rattler time in New Orleans.
No, they already reworked that contract 50 different ways. The Saints are trading him.
Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah, I don't know. Nothing really makes a ton of sense. I'm now leaning against Rodgers. So now he's probably going to sign with Minnesota, but I don't know. They're in a very interesting spot.
I don't know if Minnesota's interested. I think he's pretty.
No, that's what I mean. I don't think they're interested. Yeah.
The Mike Silver stuff. One, if you haven't figured this out yet, Mike Silver's very close to Aaron Rodgers. Has been. He's a Bay Area reporter. Has been his whole career. So when he kind of put out all that stuff where he's like, yeah, I mean, if the Giants and Steelers are his offers, he might just retire. And that's kind of why he's waiting out this Minnesota thing. Pretty interesting. So I think ultimately O'Connell is going to have to put his name on the. Okay. From what I understand, the drafting of McCarthy was a Kwesi move.
Okay.
Not necessarily an O'Connell move. Now they're asking O'Connell to put his name on whether he likes McCarthy or not. I believe that is causing some unwanted friction within the organization.
What other option does he have, though? Like, I wonder who his choice would be then.
I mean, at this point, 12/8. I mean, it's March 17th. You can't start bringing in like it's one or the other, right?
Yeah,
they can't start bringing in Jameis and everyone else because you can move off of McCarthy and trade McCarthy for a day 2 pick if you're bringing in Aaron Rodgers. if you're bringing in Jameis or Flacco or Russ, I don't think you can get anything from McCarthy. So I think that becomes part of the calculation too. But then do you want to co-sign Rodgers at this point in his career?
What about the Purdy for McCarthy? Purdy for McCarthy and stuff.
Well, San Francisco has their McCarthy, right? They have Mac Jones now. So no, I think San Francisco's going to pay Purdy.
Okay. I'm just trying to go. I'm like looking at all the potential like backup quarterbacks if there's anyone that they could potentially trade for, and there's just not. Gino would have actually been interesting there if they wanted to go that route. Did you see the Sam Darnold contract? I'm very surprised that Minnesota.
I saw they can get out after 1 year.
Yeah, it's a 1 year, $35 million deal. If Minnesota has any trepidation about McCarthy, I'm fairly stunned that they didn't just do that. Yeah, that seems very odd to me. Like that's the part that I struggle with, unless again, it's just Kwesi just pulling the strings or whatever. But if you're not sold on McCarthy and you were apparently semi-sold on Sam Darnold to the point where you wanted him back, but you couldn't get to the point of a 1 year, $35 million deal, that seems very weird to me. And don't have a backup option in play, or like at least something that they've pulled the trigger on as of yet. Well, what about our good friend Ryan Tannehill? Is Ryan Tannehill still? Is he in shape?
He didn't sign anywhere last offseason, right?
No,
we spent all this time talking about him. So
yeah, he did not. I mean, so I don't know if he's still in shape. It's not like the worst Minnesota option out there, but yeah,
the McCarthy thing is complicated because McCarthy was a lot lighter in college, and he bulked up for the NFL. Then he had a major knee injury that required several surgeries. Right? It's a meniscus injury. I don't know if you guys know much about meniscus. They don't really heal. Right? You basically like scrape it out. And the word is he's much lighter than what he used to be.
Okay.
So I think that's where a lot of these concerns are coming from. So
yeah, there's not a ton of options out there. So I don't know. We'll see. Minnesota's got a lot. They spent like they are ready to go with a rookie quarterback on a rookie deal. I'll say that much. They went out and definitely did some spending in free agency, but yeah, if they don't trust him,
if they sign Rodgers, I mean, Rodgers is going to structure that contract in a way where they're just pushing all the cap hits forward, right?
Yeah.
And they're going to say, hey, this is our window right now. And then it comes to an end, which again, might be one reason why these conversations are dragging out for forever before Rodgers really gets confirmation on whether they're in or out on him.
It's crazy. Very, very crazy. All right, Justis, you're the absolute best. Where can we find all of your incredible work? I could probably ask you a million more questions of what's going on in the NFL, but I know you have a life outside of this. So tell us all about Acme Packing Company.
Yeah, find us on Acme Packing Company. We're starting this new thing on Mondays. So Monday through Wednesday, we're going to be running a APC mock draft where we basically present one of these mock draft scenarios and you guys pick who Green Bay would be selecting in that spot. And we're doing it in the comment section, just like upvote, I guess. I think we call them recs, like recommendations.
Okay.
But it's essentially an upvote. I believe Derek Harmon is winning right now as of, recording this Monday, 7:05 p.m. Pacific. If you're hearing this on Tuesday, you'll be able to vote on round 2. So go ahead and check those out.
Sam Howell, you are a Minnesota Viking. There's the backup quarterback they can do a Sam Darnold with. That's what I came to the conclusion of. There's nothing out there. I went through every team while you were going through this. I can't find a smart backup.
Jimmy G signed.
Yep. There's nothing. How about the Patriots, dude?
I don't know. That's a bigger project than McCarthy is.
Yeah, that's so too. All right. Follow him at JUMOSQ. Keyshawn Truther, #1. You can find him at acmepackingcompany.com. We'll be back chatting with Justis next week. Follow Acme Packing, find the Pack a Day podcast wherever you get your favorite podcasts. That's going to do it for us. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.